firstly, why do you feel there is a lack of methodology and depth of understanding about how to extract the true value and competitive edge from sourcing? Do you think it's a lack of skills, a disconnect between departments, or maybe just all of those things?
Let's say 5 years ago, we were very much in a situation where the world was complicated, competition was there. There was always something going on for sure in the business world that companies needed to adapt to. But that was very much built into the vision, the model that companies had in mind. In other words, it's like you're driving a Formula One. A lot of things can happen, but you're going to stay on the track. Companies are starting to realize that, okay, maybe I'm not driving a Formula One, and maybe I'm not driving that vehicle on a track. It's more like off-road situations. I have to be ready for the unexpected. That changes drastically the way you structure your company. That changes drastically your strategy and the way that you want to implement it.
One of the biggest concerns that CPOs have, for example, is not in building supply chain resilience for the long term, but addressing more immediate and current problems.
Once you've understood where you want to go, then you can look at your strategy. And then once you understand your strategies, you can start looking at your tool set, as in which platforms align to those strategies.
We've had technology available for plus 25 years by now. So I think any procurement function need to adapt this digital first mindset when it comes to sourcing. Technology is what will address and automate and fix some of these constraints that we see right now with us trying to do everything at once in a manual way.
Generally, if someone's joining a sales role, for example, or a finance role, the requirements both before and after university are more defined. And the procurement is an area where people are still finding their feet in terms of apprenticeships or institutional programs that people use to get up to speed.
A number of surveys came out each year of CPOs who are saying, we don't believe that we have the necessary skills and the requirements to deliver to our strategic objectives. And that was before the pandemic. So when you look at that particular problem, you know what? A people problem depends upon, are you investing in education? Are you investing in training?
Simply because there's a million priorities if you work in procurement these days. We have the cost agenda. We need to secure supply. We have other priorities around, for example, ESG. So it seems like procurement is drowning in work, and that has an impact that sometimes we maybe cut corners when it comes to sourcing. It's easier to do it quick and dirty rather than following the methodology that the company have adopted.
You've also got the question of how much you mandate the tools. I think my view on this personally has changed over the last 13 years to believe in maybe a bit more firmness and rigor in terms of what tools procurement should use. Within the sales and finance profession, this is very well understood that you need to use this tool to raise an invoice. Procurement really should have the same kind of remit in terms of you should use this tool to run a tender.
But if we really want to drive a professional process and also get the optimal deal for our company, especially in these times with talks about recession, etc., we need to leverage competition. And that includes both asking suppliers, it also includes the type of feedback we provide during the process, and of course also in the negotiation phase, where I'm a strong advocate for a market-driven negotiation process in the shape of the use of e-auctions. But now with, again, the need to claw back some of these inflationary increases in cost, with the recession moving in, some countries are already in recession. Everybody is focusing on cost, and there is simply no easier, better, more efficient way to claw back cost savings down to, and I'm finding the right market level, than pushing the use of auctions.
I think that some companies have stronger silos between departments, and it's not just between finance and procurement and finance and the business and everything. It could be wider than that. It's very rare that you can do something by yourself within an organization. And it's very rare that a department itself can do something by itself on an organization. And by the way, it's very rare that a company alone can do something and change the world. In other words, you have to collaborate with other people, other departments, your supply chain partners, your customers, the suppliers, etc. When situations change, weaknesses that may have previously been existing but not appearing because fundamentally those weaknesses were not important relative to the situation that businesses were in. As the situation changes, and maybe we'll come back to that, but the situation today in the business world has changed drastically. And so when that happens, well, the weaknesses do appear. And they become evident, and people are like, well, we should have done something about it long ago, which is true, but nobody did anything because it wasn't worth it at the time. It is now.
There's always a fear of change, especially when we then talk about the use of technology. We all know how it is. We're all human, and we have our habits, and we know where we are comfortable, and then suddenly changing that with something as important as, for example, the annual tender that I run as a category manager, I can completely understand why people would have reservations against that. But it is a bit a catch-22 because all of these priorities that everybody in procurement is exposed to these days creates more work. The solution to that is technology, and it do require a change and an adoption of technologies.
Let's look at the core principles of sourcing that enterprises should be thinking about adopting. Specifically, what strategies, tools, and skills are needed from your perspective?
I think there's a number of myths that have to be addressed as well. One of them being that strategic sourcing is just a cost-focused exercise. I actually see it being much more than that today. There's tons of risk evaluation as well as part of strategic sourcing projects. Evaluations around, well, we can't just go with one supplier, even though there's a saving, we have to spread it out across multiple so we don't end up in single source situations, which can be painful. I think we've all experienced that over the last couple of years. And then again, there's relationships that need to be taken into account, their ESG parameters. So all in all, I would argue that strategic sourcing is actually more interesting and complex than ever before. Back in the days, it was mostly a cost exercise. But today, it's a much more sophisticated process that has to take many more things into account. And again, it just makes it so much more exciting to work in this field.
What is your strategy at the company level? And how does that strategy translate to what it is you're trying to do within the procurement department and in that particular sourcing event that you're trying to do? What I'm trying to say is, what you want to do has to make sense, not for you. It has to make sense relative to what the company you're working for wants to do, which has to make sense relative to what the situation around you, using broader terms, is at the point of execution.
You've got a kind of pull methodology. So you could look at, for example, how procurement is promoted internally within the business and trying to encourage people as to why they should use procurement as a way to add value rather than as a blocker.
To collaborate on a exercise that involves change, you have to do change management. And I know it's a classical point to make, but it's a fundamental point to make. You are not going to change anything if you're doing it alone or even against the others. And a lot of people, in a lot of cases, will disagree or have resistance or concerns about what it is you're trying to do. It's true in sourcing, it's true in everything. So just like you need to understand the why am I doing this? You need to understand how I'm going to do this. And so how I'm going to get the help that I need from other departments, other people to get what I need to do accomplished. And that's fundamental. And again, the tool itself is not going to give you those answers.
You've got within the team to drive the use of the right tools and techniques through KPIs.
So yeah, you have to win the hearts of people. And to win the hearts, you have to explain why you're doing it. You have to show consistency, unity, alignment within the company to avoid potential, unhealthy situations or political games. It's very important. So to your point, if top management, C-level people, and even the board are not aligned, and I would go even further, if the company's message to its employees and to the world is not aligned to what you're trying to do, you're going to face resistance. You're not going to be in the position to succeed.
I think it's very important for senior leadership to fully back procurement, and so the organization as a whole understands its value.
So when you talk about strategic sourcing, don't think about the product or what you're trying to source. Think about from whom you're sourcing the product and how you're building up that relationship of certainty and clarity and visibility.
When we make our decisions, it's extremely critical, and it sounds obvious, but it's also just not happening all the time, that we institutionalize the use of data as our foundation for decisions. If we have done a truly data-driven sourcing process, we can present the options to the stakeholders and say, if we do this scenario, this is the cost. If we do this scenario, we can save X, and that could be millions of dollars extra. Are you sure you're not willing to change and adapt if our company can benefit from it in this way? So I don't think we should underestimate the value of data also internally when we have dialogue with our stakeholders in operations, in the business, in finance, etc.
And to interrupt, going back to the days of the early ERP days, which it was a technology challenge, data was very slow to reach the procurement department. It would take 3 to 6 months to get out of the ERP into the front lines, and by that time, the shelf life had expired. We don't have that. We don't have that excuse anymore. The technology is seamless. The information is instantaneous. We have that information. We just don't know what to do with it or how to do with it.
Yeah, very true. Thank you. We've been talking about the people and management side of procurement. Let's now focus on the technology, which we have slightly touched on. But firstly, what basic tools, other than spreadsheets and email, obviously, should people be using? And the second part to this question, how should they assess their existing stack against what good should look like?
We have to adapt and adopt the new technologies, or else then we'll never become that true business partner, which I think most procurement functions are striving for.
So, in my opinion, the best of both worlds really is the idea of modularity. You need a platform that will have a series of tools, sometimes that can be used as a best-of-breed solution to solve some of the problems that you have, the quick fixes that are necessary and need to be done. But we also allow the organization as a whole to evolve towards a different way of working, favoring collaboration across departments, exchange of data, and just really working on transforming the organization as a whole.
You have to look beyond the technology. And the third part of that, which I think is the most important, is who are you partnering with? I mean, the reality is that it's no longer like the old days where the mindset was no one ever got fired for buying IBM. What you're now dealing with, or you're saying is the service provider not only providing the technology, but do they have the industry expertise in my industry to be able to work as a partner with me to extract the greatest value and be strategic in that?
They get drawn into requiring a multitude of features that you may only need one tender in 1,000 or 100, and that makes the tenders very unwieldy, complex, reduces your supplier liquidity, and invariably you end up with a tool which is just far too difficult to use and doesn't have the adoption. But the mistake that we've seen is that they try to find tools that can do all of it at once, and that's not really the way you want to go, because it alienates a lot of suppliers, and also the users within the business will find it challenging to grasp hold of some of that more complex technology.
So very often it's not the same person that will do it the following year. If they don't have to start from scratch, but if they can go into a platform and look at how did we structure the tender last year, what suppliers were invited, which ones quoted, what was the dialogue, the clarifications back and forth, what was the input, the lessons learned, etc. They can run it quicker and better the following year. So there's a huge value add for the organization in that. And all companies will benefit from such a solution. But also running those through auctions includes a lot of complexity, but also complexity, if you address it right, can be flipped into an opportunity.
I mean, look at AI. AI is fantastic. It's going to change technology. It's going to change business processes. It's going to change people's lives. There's no question about it. But as always, when we talk about AI, we go way too far. We create way too, ambitious expectations just to be disappointed a few months after. And that's already happening. Look at the press. It's like, oh, AI is not magic. Well, no, it's a tool. It does what it's supposed to do, and that's it. So at the end of the day, in technology, we have to, and this is what we're trying to do fundamentally at Market Dojo and Esther. We're trying to build technology that responds to people's needs with as little bullshit as possible, but as much focused on what the business requirements of the people we work for, customers, are. And to me, that's our way to help. If you will, the people that we work with, in finance departments, in procurement departments, technology works for people, and you should never. There is an order. Technology works for people, and if people do not embrace technology, then it's no use of anyone or for anyone. It serves no purpose. So you have to get people to embrace technology. It's another place where you got to win their hearts as well.
Let's talk about finance procurement and the relationship, or the, assumed lack of relationship between them, should we say. What is happening in this area, and how can they break down the silos, to become that, for want of a better word, power couple?
It's true that there's not a natural link between finance and procurement, which is strange in a way, because both supposedly are trying to improve the performance of the company they work for. They're trying to improve the profitability of the company they work for, but the reality is the collaboration is weak.
What the pandemic did is it made people aware of the fact is how deeply embedded supply chains are in our daily living. And what's merging is or coming down are the silos that used to differentiate between finance, procurement, IT, chief marketing. And this is a little bit of a digression here, Katie, but do you realize that chief marketing officers will spend more on IT than chief information officers? We're now dealing within a very segmented world of where these pieces no longer are islands unto themselves, but have to cohesively work together. And I think that's really where we're seeing the bridges happening between finance and procurement.
Yes, we had friction. Friction is a good thing. I think when you apply it right, friction means that people are dedicated and committed. And friction often is what helps push us all forward and make new sort of realizations. So because I don't see it as a problem when there are discussions and friction, I see that as good things. So overall, I think procurement definitely needs finance as a supporting function to help sort of count and validate the value that procurement brings. Also, often finance will be part of setting sort of the processes and the procedures that procurement need in order to drive compliance to our procurement processes. So it's like any good marriage. There are ups and downs, there are discussions, but overall, I think we all know we need each other. And that's why we have a mutual interest in making it work.
Now the situation is different. We're trying to improve the performance of the company, the profitability of the company, but is it long-term, short-term? How about the potential risks that we're facing? How do you address them? Did you choose this supplier just because you get a lower price? But how much additional risk have you created by doing so? I mean, all of those questions arise now, and they may not have been as important as it is today in the past.
And this is where I think we're very beneficial to be part of ESCA, in terms of that the strategy with them is to provide an S2P ecosystem where you have the best of breed P2P system and a best of breed sourcing system to form this wonderful S2P ecosystem, which doesn't lose its focus on the individual departments.
So it goes without saying, automation and AI is and will be a game changer and can help organisations across all functions, including sourcing. In what ways can you see it having the biggest impact? And what do you feel the appetite is for adopting AI and automation?
When it comes to strategy guidance, I think especially in the identification of opportunities. So looking at our spend data combined with other sources, market data, contractual data, and then using AI to see patterns and spot opportunities, I think is extremely exciting. But of course, also in the sourcing space around recommending different sourcing strategies, recommending the right approach to a certain category, a certain geography when we do sourcing. I see sort of things slowly but steadily developing.
I think technology, artificial intelligence, obviously being a big part of it, can enable managers, procurement managers, finance managers, executives in general to make much better decisions, much wiser decisions for their businesses.
The appetite is there from a very simple perspective of competitive advantage. If you can move faster than your competition, then that allows you to get ahead of the competition.
But I think the best is still to come when we talk AI and strategic sourcing. And again, just another reason, flipping back to that, why it's extremely exciting to operate in this field at the moment.
Okay, so what are the one or two emerging trends in sourcing? I don't know if you even want to give this away, that this could be inside information. So what are the one or two emerging trends in sourcing that nobody's talking about, but you feel are just around the corner? Specifically that you think people should be, particularly CPOs, CFOs, should be thinking about right now?
I think actually the real question is, because there are a lot of things that people are talking about, but instead of, I would rather put it, what is it that people are talking about, but nobody is really doing? And And I think an area like ESG in the context of sourcing is still very much evolving. Everybody has it as a priority on PowerPoint as part of their strategies, but very few is able to translate it down to when we run sourcing project number 25, how did ESG impact our selection criteria? That's the thing and the challenge that a lot of companies are struggling with, translating the good intentions into real actions. And then the last thing that I'll mention, which I see picking up here, is really an evergreen, and that's e-auctions. So over the last couple of years, it has not really been a suitable market for e-auctions, and very few people have been talking about it. It's one of those things that the smart ones have already adopted and is pushing quite hard.
We don't know what's ahead of us. We have to be prepared for everything. That means we have to react quickly to unexpected things. That means that from a sourcing standpoint, we have to have tools that we can activate very quickly so that you can continue your journey. In other words, if you die because you didn't expect something bad happening to you and you didn't have the tools to fix it, then the fact that you're working on long term doesn't matter. Again, that's the modularity, the agility of the tools you're using. To me, that's key.
You have to be able to look at your supplier relationships. Are you building up supply networks which there is a partnership? Because resilience actually comes from when suppliers will make you a priority. It's the ability to reach out and engage reliably and confidently and securely beyond the tier 1 suppliers, tier 2 and tier 3.
Circular sourcing and sustainability is gaining traction in terms of, not just looking at what you're doing in terms of procuring the goods or service, the goods, for example, but also, how it ends up in terms of how it might be recycled. And the other area, which is up and coming, would be supply diversity. So working with suppliers who are more diverse in their nature and ensuring you're working with all types of supply chain.